All right, some news now from the continent. Cameroon's President Paul Biya has been re-elected to an 8th term with 53.66% of the vote. But the official results announced by the Constitutional Council raised the prospect of confrontations with supporters of the main opposition candidate who has claimed victory. The result of the October 12th poll grants the 92-year-old leader a new mandate, extending his 43-year rule. Now, after the results were announced, opposition challenger Issa Chiroma Bakery apparently wrote on Facebook that gunfire was being directed at civilians gathered outside his home in the northern city. Reuters could not independently verify his account, and there was no immediate comment on his statement from the government. Now, opposition protesters have clashed with security forces over the past week after partial results reported by local media showed Biya was on course to win the vote. The government rejected opposition accusations of irregularity. All right, for more on this, let's now bring in Dr. David Nyekorach-Matsanga, is a Pan-African political analyst, a conflict resolution expert, and chairman of Pan-African Forum and Associates. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Nyekorach, and very good afternoon to you. Let's get your reaction. So Paul Biya is the world's longest-serving president. He's been in power for over 4 decades. A new 7-year term could keep him in power until he is nearly 100 years old, essentially. Your reaction to his re-election and what it means in the main for election and political legitimacy?
First of all, I'm in your region, a few miles away from you, in Lilongwe, Malawi, where I'm still struggling to make sure that Africa works. And I am appalled. I am appalled by the results that have come out of Cameroon. I am one of the few people who has opposed Paul Biya for the last 9 years since this outbreak of violence between the southern Cameroonians, Amazonia, and his party and his government. I am very appalled by the Commonwealth, the African Union. They have gone into Cameroon to observe elections, knowing very well 3,000 prisoners of conscience, political prisoners, are languishing on life sentence without trial, kangaroo courts. Britain, Commonwealth, America, France have betrayed democracy today. This election was doctored. I'm not a Cameroonian. I've written articles and articles about Cameroon, and I stand firm. As I speak right now, I'm one of the international legal experts for the 10 Cameroonians who were sentenced to life, called Nera 10, abducted, kidnapped, against non-refoulement, brought to Yaoundé, sentenced to life. This was not an election, it was a charade, and the Commonwealth must stand up, African Union must stand up, condemn such an election. This was not democracy at all.
Yeah, and I want to get your views then on what should the next steps be. I mean, from a conflict resolution perspective, especially when you consider how divided the nation is and the reports that we are hearing on the ground, what measures should regional bodies like the African Union be then taking to prevent a descent into instability?
I'm not hearing you.
I'm saying that given just what you are saying in terms of how this news may not necessarily also have been favorable for many people on the ground.
I get your answer, I think.
All right.
Are you there, people?
All right, continue, sir.
Are you there?
All right, we seem to not be hearing each other there. That is Dr. David Nyekorach, of course, just commenting on the results of coming out of Cameroon. We'll see if we can reestablish his line and hear his thoughts in terms of just what his reaction is following, of course, the win or re-election there by President Paul Biya. having been re-elected to an 8th term, we understand, with 53.66% of the vote. But just hearing from his utterances there, not very pleased, particularly as it comes to the African Union. All right, so let's continue then to get reaction following the Cameroon's re-election of President Biya. There, of course, we are in conversation with Dr. Nyekorach-Matsanga, a Pan-Africanist political analyst. Dr. Nyekorach, you were continuing to give us your reaction, saying you are appalled by this particular re-election. I mean, we were talking about just the stance and the standpoint from the African Union from a conflict resolution perspective, especially given your utterances earlier on, and seeing how divided the nation is. What measures should the regional bodies like the African Union be taking to prevent a descent into instability? And also just looking at some of the criticism in terms of the African Union's stance on Biya's prolonged rule. How does that affect its credibility in, promoting democracy and democratic governance?
African Union has already been pocketed by France. My sister, as you sit down in Johannesburg, don't think of African Union. African Union functioned when Madame Zuma, the lady Dominique Zuma, was in office. After Zuma's departure, African Union ceased to be AU. It is controlled by France. African Union knows the atrocities that are being committed in Cameroon. They have been there. If you go to their files in Addis Ababa, nothing has been documented. The gentleman in African Union, Mohamed Faki, left. Another French mole has been put in African Union. African Union died when Lamine Zuma left. That lady worked to bring African Union on top. So don't talk about it. Let's now begin a new chapter. That the conflict in southern Cameroon, where are the documents that annexed southern Cameroon? The North annexed, the French, UN, Britain annexed, left southern Cameroon, the English speakers. The killings, the conflict there is simple. The English speakers versus the French speakers. That's the conflict. The land southern Cameroon was under Resolution 1608 of the United Nations General Assembly. They did a referendum. They wanted to go, and they were ready to go. Then somebody annexed them. So that conflict must be resolved by Britain, France, United States of America, and the UN. They have not. I have been following the case in ICJ. They don't have documents. There are no documents showing that Paul Biya has authority over southern Cameroon. That conflict is going to blow up. You remember Emperor Julius Caesar told you, it is not the death of him. It was not the death, which is more important. It is the destruction of Cameroon that is going to be very dangerous after Paul Biya. Because the war is on, and we have to be honest, it is going to be a dirty, bloody conflict. Yes.
Yeah, I'm seeing that a number of African countries have also gone to the polls, and seeing also that you don't necessarily rate the African Union at all here in terms of, coming and solving any conflicts that are going to arise. What should then the bodies that you've mentioned, even some regional blocs, do then, to start imposing clearer frameworks for leadership renewal? And if so, if that can be done, what would that look like in practical terms?
We have to bite. African Union must bite. We must reform it. It is just a barking dog. It has nothing, no powers to tell Mr. Paul Biya that get out. You are killing people. Stop it. We must bite. We must start biting. And the President Ruto of Kenya must begin. Is the chairman of reforms for African Union. I am speaking as an leader in Africa. Let's be honest. Let's reform African Union to remove some of these obnoxious leaders like Paul Biya, who has slaughtered many millions and displaced millions of his own people. And he does not even rule from Cameroon. He rules from a sick bed in Switzerland. What is African Union doing? Dining with him. Commonwealth, the British Empire itself, the king presiding over the slaughter of the people of Southern Cameroon. Look at all the countries that have taken place in elections. African Union is watching Mr. Ouattara in the Ivory Coast. See what he has done. Extended, moved on, even blocked some of his people, threw them in jail. So many things have happened, and I'm not one of the few leaders who will keep quiet on this continent until we reform African Union. I'm happy that His Excellency President Ruto of Kenya is doing everything possible to reform African Union, so that if you are not democratic, get out. And you cannot harass the army generals who are coming to pick power after corrupt civilian governments approaching like that one of Biya. Paul Biya's army will not keep quiet. And we are now living under a volcano here. And let's be honest, another volcano is across in Nigeria, across there is a volcano. And the lava is boiling. And we are keeping quiet. African Union is dead. My sister, it is dead. Don't even speak about it. It won't help you. You are on your own.
Dr. Nyekorach, thank you so much for your reaction to this. Dr. David Nyekorach-Matsanga is a Pan-African political analyst, conflict resolution expert, and the chairman of Pan-African Forum and Associates. Of course, just reacting there and responding to Cameroon's President Paul Biya being re-elected to an 8th term with 53.66% of the vote.